going back behind Dusk then. Before Dusk, you were already dabbling in horror with titles like The Moonslither and Fingerbones, both of which I've played, both of which are available on Steam. Everyone, go play them. They are really very good games. What drew you, though, to psychological horror over things like traditional jump scares? Do you have a personal philosophy when it comes to crafting dread in your games?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I'm definitely not anti-jump scare, because in most of my games there is, something that you could call a jump scare at some point in most of them. Mostly I just approach stuff with like it's real simple. It's just like, do I think this is scary? And a lot of what people think of when you say, like a jump scare with the loud music and this, like, a lot of that just doesn't work for me. Like, you especially in a lot of horror movies, where it's like, if you've seen a few horror films, you start to see the pattern of exactly how the scares are set up, and it's like you can see them coming. That's something that drove me nuts in a Quiet Place, which was otherwise a really good movie, but like then it's like, oh man, you're really gonna have the musical stings, and you're gonna do but
Yep.
There's a template, isn't there, that you can see that they're playing by. Yeah.
And I know there's some guys like Puppet Combo, I know, is completely the opposite. Like he loves those sort of scares, the classic jump scares. I think it's just a very, like a lot of horror, it's a very subjective thing. And for me, I guess I tend to go with the idea of, if you need, and again, this like I said, is a subjective thing. I'm not going after other creators here, but I always feel like if you need a loud noise or sudden movement to make something scary, then you failed the horror part. My ideal is that you should be able to, if you've done the work building up the scare, you should be able to do anything. And it will be scary. It's like, what makes it scary is the context that you create beforehand. And that's what I try to do in my horror games, some more successfully than others, is I focus a lot on that building up of context. You mentioned dread. And I guess I don't really think about dread as a concept as much as I just think about, like I said, the context of things. It's like, if you have this goal of, okay, well, I want to scare this moment to be scary, then you kind of work backward and think about what all needs to be in place with the player. What do they have to, what state of mind do they have to be in? What information do they have to have? All of that, and just in doing that, I guess that creates this sense of dread as that builds up. But usually I'm not even thinking about like, okay, let's make this dread inducing. It's just thinking of like, okay, well, what do I need to do to put the player in the right headspace for these set piece moments to work?
Okay, appreciate that point of view. I've said before in a previous episode that I always feel that horror falls into two categories. One is like the Evil Dead Blood and Guts, kind of splatterhouse horror, and the other is kind of like the Seven, Silence of the Lambs sort of dread sort of horror. And if you can master either one, that's great. And what you said about failing to make a horror is very true. I think it's also true of the opposite as well, like comedy. So, like, if you have to put a laugh track in your comedy, you failed at making a comedy. There is an art to what you guys do, and it is something, of course, that you've become quite a specialist in.
It's almost exactly the same art too, because like I've said a bunch of times now, I think horror and comedy are like this far apart. They're you just turn the dial a little either direction, and one becomes the other.
Yeah, Sam Raimi does it very well, I think. It's very good.
I mean, Evil Dead is the classic. That's like the poster child for horror comedy, right? Evil Dead 2.
In terms of our audience is going to know you most for Dusk, and obviously the history that Dusk has in terms of essentially it's one of the forefathers of the boom. We don't like using the term boomer shooter, of course.
Well, you guys aren't boomer shooter fans. As far as the term goes, no.
We've been saying it for years. We're like, no, not today. Not when the boomer shooter was here.
Yeah.
No, I'm interested. I would be interested to hear if you're willing to give the reasons for that, because I'm actually on the other side where I'm fine with the term. Yeah. But which I would be interested to hear why not.
I don't know how Medium feels about it. My answer, I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. And I don't like the term boomer shooter because it's so generic. So boomer shooters are a new genre, but yet people keep putting older games so that, like, they'll say Doom is a boomer shooter, Blood is. They're not. Boomer shooter is a new genre inspired by older genres. So I prefer the term retro FPS because it's an FPS game that is designed to be to look or play in a retro manner. How I equate it is that I say you wouldn't call what's it called? You wouldn't call Dead Souls a Soulsborne. It's the game that inspired the genre. So whenever people are like, "Oh yeah, Daikatana, fantastic boomer shooter," I'm like, "No, it's not. Dusk is a boomer shooter. Proteus is a boomer shooter." So this is why I prefer the term retro, because it's a little more specific and it can encompass both the old and the new. You know, whereas boomer shooter specifically is new. But Medium, how do
I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Oh.
I think personally, I think it's so like when you're referring to Duke Nukem and Doom and the actual shooters from the as far back as really the 80s into the early 2000s would be probably that whole time period from the 80s to the 2000s where we'd be calling these like old school, now retro FPS games, which have such a broad spectrum of what that entails between arena shooters, the more Doom or even Wolfenstein-like shooters, Quake, Serious Sam, Painkiller. I mean, all over the place. But anything in that time period you would consider like kind of a retro shooter. But like I said, it gets kind of jumbled up. But I would say like when we're referring to a boomer shooter, it's more so just the games inspired by games of that period. I think boomer shooter and retro are two separate things because those older retro games are what they are, and boomer shooters are just this new name for a genre that's just taking from what came before. Because there's really, what else would you call them? There's nothing else to really, call them other than just calling them first-person shooters, but they're obviously not the same as Call of Duty or Battlefield or Medal of Honor. That's a whole nother ballgame of what those games are. So,
although it gets really messy because I've been around long enough, and I imagine maybe you guys have also, where I remember the days where the big bad guy in the FPS industry was Halo. And that was the one where fans of Doom and Quake and stuff were like, this new game, this new mainstream console PD FPS. And now people lump Halo in as being like, oh, that's also kind of a boomer shooter. Like, when did that happen? What?
Retro FPS now, yeah. But when you go back and you're like, well, Halo came out in 2001 was Combat Evolved, so
well, that's and
it wasn't even. It's not like Halo was that far after those games. So it's like, but that's just because games in general, from like the mid to late 90s to the early 2000s, evolved so drastically,
so fast.
You have these, you have like these genres that's why like immersive sims and all these other things exist, because we was just starting to come up with random ass names for things that we don't know what to call them, because like Deus Ex is still like a first person shooter, but it's not just a first person shooter. So we just have to start throwing names at things. So when you say retro, it's so broad. And is a game inspired by Halo in the modern day? Would that be considered a boomer shooter? I don't know.
Well, Dark Ages is basically a Halo game. So
what?
It's basically faster Halo. The combat design is very Halo. which isn't a bad thing. Halo has
I
good
guess I can see
combat
that, yeah.
design. Yeah, it's so I think genre discussions surrounding maybe this is true of any sort of subgenre that you'd be that someone is an enthusiast about, but it's like it's really fascinating how almost impossible it is to draw good, clear, concrete genre boundaries when you start getting down to that level of detail for especially with, like you said, how fast things moved in the 90s, and also the fact that like this is the thing that gets really crazy, is that Doom, when it came out, I'm preaching to the choir here, I'm sure, because you guys are all retro FPS nerds, but like when that came out, they were trying to make a realistic game. Like that was like a realistic, scary horror game at the time. And in fact, a lot of those developers and designers and stuff, they were really striving for like realism when they were making stuff like Doom or Quake, and then later on Half-Life.
It just kind of by chance like became like this fast-paced like action thing.
Yeah, and then all of us now, we're actually striving for the opposite by copying the design of people who were trying to. It's like it's weird. It's
right.
But yeah, that makes sense. My short take on the boomer shooter thing is basically that I actually do prefer the term retro FPS as sort of a blanket term to cover. Yeah. Like I prefer that, but I've always been kind of iffy about policing genre terms that organically evolve. Like back 10 years ago, it was walking sims that everyone was talking about I remember, may he rest in peace, our PC lord Total Biscuit. He was really he did not like the term walking simulators and was trying to get virtual installation started and even at the time, it's like, dude,
I think that's equally as poor, but I do think that
I
walking
didn't like
sim
that.
is a terrible
but
name.
Also, it was like, dude, this isn't how it works. Like, so many things have stupid. We like. Do you think if they got to actually choose, the forefathers of the film industry would have picked movies as being like?
Yeah, probably not.
Like that comes from moving pictures, movies. It's literally like baby talk. It's like it's terrible. All of these things they're always terrible, and you just can't do anything about it because it's like whatever evolves and whatever people pick up and start using, that's what it's gonna be. Yeah. So that's why I've always been like,
exactly.
Look, I know technically it's like they're Gen X shooters or whatever. I know that it's like but this is what everyone's calling it, and honestly, as far as genre names go, hey, at least boom is an explosive noise. At least it's like, okay, they're boomer shooters because things explode. That's like, it could be worse. But at the same time,
it has a double meaning because it's also like people saying, "Well, you're a boomer shooter."
Boomers are like 80
evolved. Yeah, because it evolved out of the 30-year-old boomer meme, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's also a very interesting discussion for like enthusiasts in the subgenre to talk about. Like, where are these distinctions drawn? Because, like I said, back when I was a teenager or a young adult, that cutoff point would be like 98. And anything that's like Half-Life influenced and beyond was like, that's the dark ages. That's when FPS games started dying. And now it's, however many years later, now it's like, okay, well, yeah, anything. I've seen people being like, oh yeah, 7th gen, that would be a boomer shooter, right? Like, no.
Yeah, so
maybe
when we're
I
talking,
don't know
so
anymore.
like when we're talking retro, I mean it's So I mean, you can look at games from like 10, 15 years ago, and you're like, where would I place those? Like, where do they go? Where does the where does the bullet storms and the Just
I have
anything from
never-
that era. Like, what is?
I have never been on the Bulletstorm as a retro shooter train. Never.
Yeah. It
Even
has-
when
no,
that
I mean,
came
I
out,
wouldn't
I
say
have
it is
been a-
either, but
I have been
Well-
a proud Bulletstorm anti since the 2000s.
yeah.
Not
Why
really.
don't
I'm just mostly joking.
why don't we let's talk some Dusk.